Hi, I'm Micah Clark with the American Family Association. Thank you for joining us today. This is the third week of the Indiana General Assembly, and it's an important deadline because at the end of this week or today, if a bill has not gone through the committee process, it is technically dead. So this was the last week of committee hearings for the bills in their House of Origin. So next week, early next week, is the deadline for second and third readings. Now what that means is a bill goes through three steps: committee hearing process, second reading, which is the amendment stage on the floor, and third reading, which is the final vote. So we've just passed that first deadline of all bills needing to pass through committee hearing. So if you're watching a bill through the Indiana General Assembly website and it has not received a committee vote, a hearing and a committee vote, that bill is technically dead. So the hundreds of bills that were filed, most of them are dead now. Next week we'll reach that critical point for final votes. And then the bill has to go through those three same steps in the opposite chamber. So all live House bills will go to the Senate, all live Senate bills will go to the House, and they'll go through those three-step processes again. So I want to talk about just one bill today, but it's a very important bill. I've mentioned this before. Senate Bill 128. Now, I didn't think this bill was that big of a deal in terms of opposition to it. The bill is a transparency bill for education. What it simply says is that when a school approves sex education, if they choose to teach it at all, it's not required. There's certain things that are required. But if a school chooses to teach something on sex education, school board members have to approve it, just like they approve other curriculum or have curriculum committees. But the school board needs to know what the school is teaching on sex education because it's a sensitive topic. And so I think this bill, and as I testified for it this week, it actually protects school board members from being blindsided by a controversy they didn't know about. They're elected, they have meetings, people show up, parents call them concerned about something. A lot of times school board members don't know about these topics, didn't know what was being taught. And so I think it protects school board members from being blindsided. The other thing is it helps parents. As I said, it's a transparency bill. When the school chooses to teach on this in 4th through 12th grade, if they choose to teach on it, and the school board approves it, the school must then post on the website, the school website, what is being taught so parents can see it. I think this is beneficial for parents. It's transparency again, so parents know in advance what's to be taught. This could cause parents to talk about certain subjects with their children in advance, which I think is a good thing because parents are the primary teachers, the primary influence, and the primary responsibility in raising a child. So I think it's a good thing for parents to know what's to be taught in their school on any subject, but particularly one that's this significant. Well, what surprised me, however, on Wednesday when I testified in the Senate Education Committee on Senate Bill 128 was the opposition to it. I didn't expect the far left to come out like they did in force, not quite like we've seen previous years. They weren't down there yelling and screaming, but their lobbyists were there, and we had transgender activists, we had the ACLU, we had the ISTA Teachers Union, we had some liberal ministers and some people off the street who were far left complaining about this bill. And I didn't really understand their arguments, didn't expect their arguments. I thought their arguments were very strange. What I think is really clear is that they do not want the light of day shown on what they're teaching inside the school or what they want taught inside the school. And they probably know that school board members may not approve of this because they're elected. They're accountable to the voters, and they know voters don't want something really bizarre or immoral taught to kids. I think that's their fear. They were talking about outing transgender students. I don't see how the bill does that. It simply tells a parent what's being taught in the school. And parents deserve to know what is public in the public schools. If we're a public school, shouldn't the public know what's being taught? So this is a very important bill. My guess is it will pass the Senate, mostly on a party line vote. Now I will say the Democrats were stunned in the committee and they were upset because the Indiana School Board Association, which is a very powerful lobby, I don't often agree with them. I know they're lobbyists. I've known him for 30 years almost. And we don't agree on a lot. But he, to his credit, came out, testified, again, a very powerful lobbyist with the Indiana School Board Association, and said the same thing I did and the same thing Ryan McCann did with the Indiana Family Institute. This bill's no big deal. This is what school boards ought to be doing already. And so they didn't oppose the bill. In fact, they supported the bill. And I think it made some Democrats angry because I think they thought they were going to oppose the bill. But they flat out said, this is really not that big of a deal. It's just transparency. We support transparency. I think they see it also as a bill, like I do, to protect school board members from being caught up in a controversy that they didn't know about, that they ought to know about. So I want to thank the Indiana School Board Association for supporting this bill. I hope they support it in the House too. And then we'll see what happens. But I would encourage you to call your state senator today on Friday or tomorrow on Monday if you haven't. Call or email them and ask them to support Senate Bill 128 on human sexuality and transparency in education. Again, it's a very simple, short 2-page bill. You can read it online. Just go to the Indiana General Assembly website. See what you think of it. I didn't think it was that big of a deal. I mean, I think we want transparency. A public school should be public. Parents should know what's being taught to their children. And school board members, as elected leaders, need to know what's going on in the school. And I don't think this is going to cause problems. I think a lot of school boards will approve what they're already teaching, and that's fine. But the public has a right to know what's going on this topic. And so I think this is a very good bill. I didn't expect it to receive some of the opposition it did, so it does need your support. Please call your legislator about Senate Bill 128 on transparency in education. You can find that below, but if you go to the Indiana General Assembly website, the Find Your Legislator link will help you find out who your legislator is by entering your address, and you can call and email them. I encourage you to do both. But if you don't have time, please go to that site and at least email your legislator. Let them know you support Senate Bill 128. Now, we've got a lot of other bills that are live. I'll talk about those next week. But again, I really want to tell you, the media, I think, is going to try and gin up this issue. They don't have a lot to deal with. The legislature is not dealing with a lot of controversial issues. And frankly, the media is very pro-LGBT, pro-far left, and they love these type of controversies. They love stirring people up and making a molehill into a mountain. And that's what I think they're doing with this bill. I don't see this bill as sinister at all. I think most people would say, should I have the right to know what's being taught in sex education? Absolutely. Now, the issue was raised, well, can't a parent go talk to their teacher or their principal or their school board member about what's being taught? A lot of times I've talked to parents and school board members and principals, they didn't know what was going on until a parent came to them. But sometimes it takes a week or two. You have to schedule an appointment. A lot of parents may not want to do that, may not have the time to do it, but they can go to a website in the summer before school starts, the school website, or during school and find out what's being taught. And that's a much easier route than setting up an appointment with a teacher. And it's a better use of the teacher's time. The parents can go look at it first and decide if that's necessary. But again, I want to tell you how important Senate Bill 128 is. Please call your state senator. And then next week, we'll talk about it again. Hopefully it will pass next week. We'll see. Pray about that. And then I'll encourage you to have you call your state representative about Senate Bill 128. Assuming it passes, nothing's ever for certain. I think it will pass along a party line vote. But please pray for Senate Bill 128 and make your voice heard in support of Senate Bill 128 on transparency in education regarding human sexuality. Well, I'm Micah Clark. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Thank you for joining us today.